I have insurance, and so I don't need to focus on anything else other than just my physical well-being, because a bike is completely replaceable. And the fact that you have insurance and that you're protected and you're covered, all you need to do is focus on yourself and getting yourself better. Like, I'm going to try and I'm going to take risks and I'm going to take chances, because why else? Why would you not, right? I'm Alicia Speak. I'm 37. I'm a full-time lawyer, but I'm also a cyclist for Cycle Team London.
Thank you very much indeed. We're going to keep it Australian here in the theatre at the Rouleur Classic, because the next person on stage is a man who, well, not just the first Australian to wear the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, the first non-European to don the maillot jaune. So incredible achievement back in 1981. He since went on to win various races and really inspired the next generation of Aussies, the likes of Oakley, I'm sure, people like Cadell, to go on and achieve great things in professional bike racing. Please put your hands together for Phil Anderson. Phil, really good to see you. We'll get on to the Palmares and all the stories from back in the day in a minute, but you and I were just talking before we came on about how much you've enjoyed being here and meeting your old mates and your old, well, not enemies, but your old competitors like Greg LeMond, and you've seen Pippa York again, who you used to live with when Pippa was Robert Miller back in the early 80s, and and Sean Yates as well, you, I'm sure, raced against too. It's been an enjoyable couple of days for you.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. We were all obviously, Philippa York and Sean Yates, we were on the same team. In fact, we came through the same pathway going through the ACV in Paris and turned professional for the Peugeot team and later on the Panasonic team. So, our careers were there and quite often on the same team. But, you retire and, I live down the other end of the world, so I don't get to see these guys very often.
Yeah.
Every 4 or 5 years I'll see Greg at the Olympics doing commentary, or, I'll see Sean at the Tour de France, with a team or something like that. But it's great to be here and be a bit more relaxed and, have a few beers with the lads and a good laugh.
Now, I mentioned Cadell there in the introduction. Cadell's someone I know reasonably well, and I don't know if you realise, I know you have a place quite close to his on the Great Ocean Road down under, but he obviously went on to win the Tour, was massively inspired by your heroics in the early 80s when he was a young lad, and because you really set things in motion for Australian road riders, but that was never actually your plan necessarily. You just kind of fell into getting into the yellow jersey. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say I just fell into it, but...
Okay, that was a bit of a stretch, but it wasn't the plan necessarily.
Yeah. But no, for me, for starting off, there's not the culture of racing in Australia what there is even here in Britain, let alone in Europe. And so, for me, it was very much of a hobby when I started, and got onto the sort of state team and the national team. Got to go to the Commonwealth Games in '78 and got a gold in the road race, and that got me an invitation to come over to Europe and join the club in Paris. That's where I met Philippa York, and But my goal then was to sort of get some experience with this bike racing game in Europe, and then after the Com Games, do the Olympics, because this was in the years when there's a big segregation between amateurs and professionals, and so for me, I was come up through the amateur ranks, and after doing the Com Games, go to hopefully get selected. But when I come over here and saw that there was professional races and such things as the Tour de France and huge events, big grand tours, you're talking a different era. There wasn't television coverage down there, and I remember when I first started bike riding, trying to find out about equipment and racing and tactics and training and all this, and there was nothing online. Obviously there was I think my school had a computer, and I think the computer room was about this size, and that one computer took up the entire room. You have more than that on your watch now, but anyway, yeah. So it was such a different scenario back then, but. I remember going down to the library trying to find information, you're going through the microfiche and try and look up cycling. But now it's just so many, everybody can become an expert very quickly.
Were you seeking out the information, Phil, because it's something you knew you wanted to do? Was it, and if so, why did you know you wanted to do it when there was so little coverage of it in Australia? And it was similar in the UK at the time as well.
Well, I enjoyed it, and when you start winning, and then you sort of start thinking, well, maybe there's some potential here. Maybe I can go on and have a crack at the Olympics. You turn one corner and then you already start looking to the next corner. It's like lucky there, you get to the top of one mountain, you see another mountain over there, and you think, oh, okay, I'm sure I can get there somehow. And you just push on. So it wasn't in my my big plan, my 5-year plan. Certainly not. I certainly didn't have it on the plan to be here 35, 40 years later, talking to you on this stage.
No, I didn't know we would do that either, but I'm glad we are. I'm glad we are. The other thing about being an Australian, having to come to the heartland of professional racing, means you have to go halfway around the world to do so. And that can go one of two ways. Either you win the respect of the French riders who think, wow, you must really love this because you've come halfway around the world to do it. I wouldn't do that, which is what Simon Gerrans has told me, for example, about when he moved from Australia to France. Or you suffer as a result of being a foreigner doing well on their turf. Which was it for you? Did you win respect, or did they gang up against you?
Possibly both, but once you start getting the results, I think the respect comes. But it was a tough run. The first year getting into the amateurs, and then I did very well as an amateur in Paris together with Robert. He did really well, Robert Miller. I think they have like a national series of races, a point system in France, and historically it always been the French riders, but Bob, got first in that series, and I got second. So we sort of cut our teeth over on the amateur circuit, and we both won a lot of events, and sort of earned our place. But then you're at the bottom of the pros, and you've got to sort of work your way through the ranks, and it's tough. You get in a crosswind in an event like, I don't know, Ghent-Wevelgem or even Tour of Flanders, and you do a turn on the back and you swing back, and suddenly all the doors are shut, and nobody lets you in. But you progress and you start getting respect. You start winning some races, and doing some good things in the peloton, and suddenly doors start opening and those gaps open to let you in. So, but it is very tough in the beginning. And I remember in subsequent years, once I'd sort of progressed through the ranks of the pros, you'd see the newbies come in, and we'd all be keeping it tight.
Lock them out. Do the same thing to them.
You can learn the way I did.
Yeah. But the language of the professional peloton these days is pretty much English, and if they don't speak it well, at least they understand it. Not so back then, and that would be another level of the culture shock for you, as coming from Australia. I guess you have to learn the lingo so you can just get by both living and racing.
Back in Australia, part of the education system, you have to learn a second language. And back when I was in, it would have been year 8, we call it Form 2, but year 8, you had to do a subject, you had to do a language. I think, down in Australia, you either chose Indonesian or French, and I don't know why I chose French.
Thank God.
Because when you're down there, the world was much bigger. Then you never think you're ever going to come over to Europe, or let alone bike race or anything like that. That was long before I was racing. So I was always at the back of the class looking out the window thinking of better things to do, and didn't pay any attention. But I did get a little bit of a grasp of the language. But it's tough, when you're in a room full of French riders, on the team, and nobody speaks English. It's can be daunting. But you get the hang of it, and you slowly pick up the language.
And you didn't do things by halves. When you did turn pro, you went to a big team, and you had to fit in pretty quick.
Yes. Both. I keep talking about Philippa or Robert Miller, but our pathways were very much run parallel. So we were both turned pro for the Peugeot team. And yeah, it was a big squad, possibly one of the biggest. You know, there was Rally, TI Rally, and there was Renault, another French team.
Peugeot is historic. I mean, did you feel the weight of history when you're pulling on that famous jersey?
Yeah. No, it's it's a responsibility. And my first year was 80. I didn't expect to do the tour, and I didn't do the tour. I'd only won a couple of small races, a Kermesse race in Belgium and another race down the south of France. But it wasn't really until my second year, in 81, when I started getting some consistent results, and they put me in the short list for the tour, and I got my foot in the door. So that was great.
And you got the yellow jersey, 81. The first year of the tour, and you become the first non-European to even pull on the maillot jaune. I mean, that must have been beyond your wildest dreams at that point.
Yeah, like I, obviously led races before, but nothing nothing really compares to the Tour de France. Even the other Grand Tours, it doesn't compare to getting the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. But I didn't realise the significance of it. I didn't even realise I was the first non-European or any of this. I just put on the jersey, got the presentation. It's nice. You get to meet all the dignitaries, and suddenly you get rushed, mobbed by the press. It was a huge change for me, and yeah, from that day on, I think it was late in June on day 5 of the tour. Yeah, my life was changed forever. I wouldn't be sitting up here, like I said.
No, and the privilege is all mine, and everyone watching. I guess the other thing is, and it's still applicable today, really, is that Australia produces great sprinters, like great strongmen of the pro peloton. But when it comes to GC contenders, not so many. So it makes the achievement feel even bigger when you think about it in those terms.
Yeah, we have a strong history of producing very good track riders in the past, and there's been a sprinkling of excellent road riders, and I think I was maybe, when you look at the historical numbers of Aussies that have done the tour, I think I was maybe the 23rd or the 25th Australian that had competed in the Tour de France. But and there were some great riders before me. Some great riders, even going back to not the very first Tour de France, but back, I think it was like 1910, 1911. We had riders back then. So when they were national teams, I think the Aussies actually rode together with the British. They had like a Commonwealth team back then, and maybe a Kiwi or two. So they would have been good footballers actually. But it was. To be the first Aussie or the first non-European was a real honour. But like I said, I didn't realise the significance of it at the time.
Because let's be honest, you could have been European because you were born here in London, right?
Well, that's right.
So you could have been one of ours.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it's all a farce then.
It's all a farce, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Britain's
You're European after all.
Yeah. In the footsteps of many great British riders.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, you're right. Bradley Wiggins is kind of half Australian and born in Belgium, so we'll take him for our own, and the Aussies can have you, and
they can just have me, can they?
But you were here for quite a while. It wasn't like you were born here and then suddenly rushed back.
Yeah, I was very young when I went over. I think I was less than 1, so
yeah, okay.
So it wasn't too long.
All right, fair enough. You're definitely from down under. Look, I know Philippa, Robert, has cropped up several times. I do my homework, and I spoke to Philippa the other night when she was here at the Rouleur Classic, and I said, look, I'm talking to Phil on Saturday. Got any questions? Loads of questions. Okay. The first one you kind of answered. Why you lived in Belgium for so long when coming from Australia? It must have been a brutal change of weather. I mean, that's true for even us going to live in Belgium, let alone Australian. So why did you stay there for so long?
Yeah, well, when I first came over, I lived in Paris for a year with that club, the ACVB, together with Robert Miller. He lived in one building and I lived in another. I was living with all these French guys. And then we turned pro, and I lived in a house just on the side of Paris, and then after 3 months I said, bugger this, bloody Parisians, I'm going to move up to Belgium. So went out to Belgium. It was great. It was fantastic.
People.
Yeah, very friendly people. The weather, you're right, the weather's shite, but actually not much different than today, actually. I actually went for a run. It was sunny out there. I actually saw a shadow. I thought, no, this isn't right. But no, Belgium was great, and And yeah, I loved it, and I really got into the culture of Flanders, and you know, it was my goal and my dream to try and win the Tour of Flanders, and got close a couple of times, and yeah, I just loved the people and so friendly, and you know, compared to what it was in Paris, you know, it was night and day.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Pick up the Flemish. You speak Flemish.
Speak a little bit of Flemish, yeah, which is great. But the thing is, in Flanders, everybody speaks English.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, in Paris, no. But yeah, and then the last 4 years, I moved down the south of France, which is great. You know, the weather's fantastic, and you know, as you get a bit older, you know, you get rusty when you're always having to go out in the rain.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, when you live in Belgium, if you look out and it's raining, it doesn't matter, you're still got to go out riding. But when you're south of France and it's raining, you can take a day off because you know the next day is going to be sunny. It's complete, you know, a bit more like back home, you're right. But if it would have been the other way around though, if I was living my first, you know, my first 10 years like I was in Belgium, if I was living in the south of France, I don't think I would have been the rider that I became, because so living in Belgium just really hardens you up, you know, whereas down the south of France, it's, you know,
too soft.
Softens you up, yeah.
Yeah. It's a recurring theme on the chats we're having on the stage today. There was obviously overlap with Greg LeMond, who I was talking to just a few moments ago. I have a question about him in a minute, and specifically around Oakley's, because we had a good chat about that. Another question from Philippa, though, and this kind of overlaps with LeMond a little bit. Philippa says, there was also the Hinault crash in Saint-Étienne in 1985 in the Tour de France, when the Badger blames you for causing it. Hinault was extra angry, which I imagine is incredibly, like beyond angry, because I think angry is his base level. Extra angry with everybody after that, so can't have been fun being blamed for it. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
He's still angry about it, actually.
Okay. So what happened?
Yeah, that was the year that Greg and Hinault were having you know, a big
race
battle
amongst themselves.
Yeah, a battle within his team, and I was always pretty close to Greg. We were always good mates. We were virtually neighbours in Belgium there, and yeah, this particular day it was I don't know, maybe a group of 50 riders, somewhat select, and we're coming into Saint-Étienne, which is a big boulevard, you know, for the finish line. So we're sort of I don't know, in the last, you know, kilometre or so, and it gets getting faster and faster, and finally, with like 400 metres to go, Steve Bauer opened up the sprint. It was reasonably fast, but not a pure sprinter. I mean, it's a bit like myself, but you know, we'd been over a few hills, so there weren't too many, you know, fast guys there. So we were all there in a crack, having a crack, and as Steve Bauer jumped, his back wheel went over one of those little cat eyes, and his whole back of the bike came out like this in front of me, and took out my front wheel, and I went down, and Hinault went down, or Mr. Hinault went down, and you know, and we're all sort of lying on the ground, sort of, you know, we sort of come to a skidding halt, and the race is just, you know, the race is over basically, and we look up, and we all sort of look to each other, and you know, bloody Hinault didn't look too happy. He had a broken nose, I think, and anyway, we got up and went to the line, and I remember my bits and pieces. I lost a shoe that day. I still have some souvenir undertook my shoe. You know, this is back in the days of you know, straps and
toe clips.
And yeah, clipless pedals, not clipless, yes, clips and straps. And I actually lost my shoe. I hear that if you have an accident, like even in a car accident, you know, if there's you know, somebody's tragically thrown out of the car or something, quite often their shoes are left in the car. That's right, and the body will be over there. Well, that's what happened to me. My shoe wasn't still on the bike, but the shoe was definitely off my foot when I over the side there. But I finished the stage with one shoe.
Good work.
It was only a few hundred metres, but yeah, so I get back to the hotel, and the press are waiting there. I thought, oh, you know, like, you know, I don't know why they're at the Peugeot hotel for, and yeah, I guess Hinault had accused me for taking him down, being like Greg's hitman to try and get rid of him for the tour, you know. So I didn't see Hinault until the next day, and you know, he had a big shiner, and his nose was all bloody bent out of shape. And he came up to me and started banging on about you know, putting him down. And I said, what are you talking about? You know, it had nothing to do with me. I went down as well. I'm not going to throw myself down in front of somebody else. Doesn't matter how good a mate Greg is, you know, I'm not going to do that for anybody.
But, I mean, Greg mentioned earlier the whole Oakley thing, and did you wear them on the bike before he wore them, or what's the link there between the two of you? Because suddenly, and also the other thing is you always chose to wear a helmet, even at the time when you didn't have to. So you were kind of at the forefront of that sort of that gear thing that Greg was as well.
Yeah, the helmet thing was. I remember my early years. There was a guy in the peloton who spoke English, Puerto Rican guy, Agostino. He's a good Portuguese rider, and he was really friendly. He'd always come up and say hi, and I sort of seek him out just to say hi to him, every race that we were at together. And then suddenly he wasn't there, and I heard the news that he'd been in a tragic accident in a sprint I think it was Tour of Portugal, and that would have been about 82 or something like that. And at that stage, nobody wore helmets, and we had to wear helmets in certain countries. You had to use a helmet when you were racing in Belgium, I think in Germany. I don't think you had to in the Netherlands, but certain countries you did. But after that, I pretty much wore a helmet just about every race. Maybe not in a mountaintop finish, you'd take it off, but quite often I'd just put a stretcher casket over the top of those helmets, and and then there was the saw the evolution of the helmet. Eventually it went to sort of polystyrene. Looked like bloody putting an ice box on your head. We call them an esky down under. But it was interesting to see how that all sort of evolved, and it wasn't until sort of the 90s that it became compulsory. But and in Australia you have to wear helmets, all the time.
Yeah, by law, yeah.
Yeah, by law. Not just when you're racing, but all the time. I don't think it's like that here, is it?
No, but it's an ongoing debate here, and people often point to Australia saying, well, it's the law there. So, but we won't go down that one because that's a debate that will never end.
Controversial.
Yeah. Well, not really, but I'd imagine most people who ride bikes here just naturally put them on, especially when they're riding race bikes.
Yes.
But we've got you on stage. We won't go down that path.
Yeah, the Oakleys, of course. Greg and I were good friends, as I said, and we're both at Long Beach Bike Show, which was a big show back in the day. Now I think they have it in Vegas. It used to be down in California, and I was there. I don't know who I was there for. Maybe my team, and Greg was there for another sponsor. And we met up. I'm trying to think of his name now. He developed Oakley, and at that stage, Oakley made grips for BMX bikes, and the little crash bar which goes across the centre bar on BMX bikes, or it was prior to mountain bikes, I guess. But but he came up with this concept of wanting to do a sports glass or sports sunglass, and I'd been using Ray-Ban factory pilots, I think they were, because I used to get allergies in springtime in Europe. And so I'm trying to think of his name. Anyway, he came up, Mike Bell, I can't remember. Anyway, he came up to me and Greg and said, he wanted to launch these glasses, and he showed us like a prototype, and they were pretty big, just like you saw some of the photos. They were a bit more like a goggle than a glass, and I mean, I wasn't afraid of trying new stuff, and they're a bit sort of radical looking. And Greg was a little bit hesitant, I think, but I think we pretty much wore them at the same time. We took them over and tried them. I think it was a reasonably early season, maybe the spring, and and they were quite an expensive product from the very beginning. I mean, now they're ridiculously expensive, but even then, you get there were no real sports glasses back then. Like I said, I had the closest thing. That was an aviator glass, and it was glass. It's so dangerous when you think of it as something which, which is made out of glass on your face. There was nothing. And so suddenly these glasses come out, and Greg and I are wearing them, and, there was, a big kerfuffle in the press about these new eyewear and how weird they were. And, I don't think television liked them, and the photographers, because you couldn't really see who it was. It was hard to identify the riders. And but then I think it was by the Dauphiné, we had suitcases of glasses and just given them out to the other riders, and they all became very, very popular, and everybody wanted them. They didn't want money to wear them or anything like that. They were great glasses, and great in the rain and the dust. It was fantastic, and the rest is history.
And you're still wearing them now?
Still wearing Oakleys now, that's right. Yeah, no, still make a great product, and we've seen them evolve. And they actually did a remake of those factory pilots about 3 years ago. Yeah. And I think they used Greg, and maybe, I don't know if they used Cav or not, because he's also an ambassador for the brand. So, they made a remake of the glasses.
We should ask him. He's going to be here a little bit later on. Let's just throw things all the way forward then, Phil, to the here and now. I know you still get out, you still ride your bike, you're still looking trimmer as a result. And as I say, you live down the road from Cadell and the Great Ocean Road, and you're usually around for the big Aussie racing season in January as well. You still enjoy it, and do you still like to keep an eye on the Australian contenders when the big foreign races are on?
Yeah, no, it's very exciting to see the young riders coming up, and especially when they get to the pinnacle of the sport. And you've got riders like Caleb Ewan getting out there and winning stages. We haven't had, we've got Richie Port there, but he's had a few cracks at the tour, and he's still got it there, but
it's bad luck though, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has had bad luck, but it seems to go along with he's had a bad run, unfortunately. Yeah. But I still get out on the bike a couple of times a week, and still love riding. And I go to the Tour Down Under and take my bike over there, and it's it's in the middle of summer. And, the race basically bases itself in Adelaide, and every day there's stages around Adelaide. It's a great concept, and the riders love it because, of course, it's summer. But, you sort of open your suitcase at the start of the week, and you just go out and race every day and come back. It's very, very good for the riders.
But this year, Phil, just to finish off, just tell the crowd what you're tagging on to the end of that sort of week of racing. You're not going back for the Great Ocean Road race because...
Oh yeah. This year, the weekend after the Tour Down Under, and that's when Cadell's race, the Great Ocean Road race, Cadell's Great Ocean Road race is on. But Fat Boy Sim's playing in Adelaide on the beach in Glenelg, so I'm going to be there, in the crowd, in the mob, in the pit with watching too many DJs, and it's going to be a great weekend.
I love that. I just feel getting down at the front to Fat Boy Slim. Still young at heart, undoubtedly. I'm sure you still ride very quickly on a bike as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please show your appreciation for Phil Anderson.